Welcome to this webinar showing Shaderlight for SketchUp. During this demonstration, I'm going to show you how simple it is to create photorealistic images of your SketchUp model using Shaderlight for SketchUp. Now, first of all, we'll start off what is Shaderlight for SketchUp Pro. As we mentioned, we're going to create photorealistic images of your SketchUp model. But what's different between us and a lot of the other renderers is that the image updates interactively while you make these changes. And we're going to see this as we run through the demonstration. So as we make changes to the geometry, lighting and materials, we're going to see these update interactively in the render window. So the principle behind Shaderlight is the simplicity. Now we want to make it easy to use. We've made the tools look and feel like SketchUp tools. So it's not going to feel like you're learning a whole new package and you have to learn a lot of complicated new features. And as we can see from the comment from one of our users, this is something that we really feel we've achieved, and hopefully you'll see this as we run through the demonstration. So I'm not going to go through too many slides. I'm going to go straight into the tour of Shaderlight for SketchUp here. So I'm going to show you the demonstration of the software. So I have this SketchUp model here. Now this is a model that I've edited from the 3D warehouse. Now I've only edited the geometry on this model. I haven't done anything to set it up for Shaderlight for SketchUp. So this is a SketchUp model. All of the materials on here are SketchUp materials. So I'm going to look at the 4-button toolbar here from Shaderlight. And we're going to run through all of these tools as we're working through this demonstration. But I'm going to click on the camera icon here. And what this does is this opens the Shaderlight render window and this connects it to our SketchUp model. So we can now see that we're connected to our SketchUp model and the render has actually started. So I'm just going to choose always on top. Now this means that when I click into SketchUp Pro here, it's not going to send it back to sort of the Shaderlight window behind the SketchUp window. Now it is worth mentioning that Shaderlight works happily with both SketchUp Pro and SketchUp Free versions 7.1 and 8. So you don't have to have the Pro version. Okay, so our render has finished here. And we can see that what we've done is we've taken the SketchUp materials. Now we've added more settings to these, so we've recreated them for Shaderlight. Now the SketchUp window here, the Shaderlight window here, we can actually zoom into here. So I'm now looking at this at 150%. So, we're zoomed into our final image here. And we can see on the water particularly here that we have a bump map set up. And we've done all the science behind the scenes here. So you don't have to understand how water looks like water. We've done all this for you. So there are a lot of terms that you have to learn in other renderers. But these are all in place for you in Shaderlight. So we can also see the wooden decking here. We have the glossy finish, so we have the blurry shadows, and in the reflections, there is a bump map there as well. We've just got a subtle bump map. Now these are all set currently to just an automatic finish. So we've taken the SketchUp materials and we've just applied our settings to make them look better. So these aren't Shaderlight materials, these are SketchUp materials. We're going to have a look at this as we go through. So as I mentioned, what's different to Shaderlight for SketchUp is the interactivity. So if we zoom around our model, we can see this interactively updating there. So it's nice and simple to see how things look when you make changes. So if we make a change here, so I'd say I'd like a wall at the side of this this model here. So I'm just going to very quickly just sort of push-pull a small wall there. And as I said, these interactively update. So we've just stretched that there, and we've got the wooden materials. So that's certainly not sort of the finish we want. So I'm going to go into my SketchUp material editor here, and I want to apply some different materials to this wall. So as I mentioned, it is just using the SketchUp material editor. So if I just choose something here like the brick, and we'll just choose the brick antique here, and I can apply this material to these faces of the wall, and we can see that interactively updates. So I'm just going to change the scale of this particular tile. There we go, and that interactively updates. Oh. So, okay, so now I'll just paint that on the back of the wall there. Now if we zoom into the wall, this was something that I mentioned earlier. We've applied a bump map to it as well, so it actually looks like that brick has the texture there. And we can edit that, and we're going to have a look at that later. So if I go back to our model, so we can see that we've got the shadows in our render as well. And this is coming with the shadow settings in SketchUp. So I've got the time and date here. So if I choose a different time of day, we can see the shadows update. And you know, so that's sort of fully compatible to work with that, and we can change the intensity, and you know, that all updates as well. So you know, we've got that compatibility alongside. Now let's look at making some changes to this. So I'm just going to zoom out so we get a preview of our model. So we're just looking at sort of 75% here. So I'm going to have a look in the Shaderlight render settings. Now the render settings of a renderer can often be quite a large, daunting place, but this is the entirety of the Shaderlight render settings. So at the top here we've got our output resolution, so the resolution that we're rendering at, and I'm rendering at 720 by 405. And these can go up and up to 16,000 by 16,000. So you can do large print resolution renders as well. Now we've also got a simple quality slider. This controls a lot of behind the scenes settings. So a lot of people will turn this up to the sort of top 1 or 2 highest settings here. And this is something that I would really only save for sort of your final render. You know, ultimately you're turning a lot of behind the scenes things on here. It turns the quality up to the absolute top level, and you know, that will affect your render times. So we're rendering an exterior at the moment, and we're going to look at the difference between this exterior rendering and the other option, which is interior. And we're looking at the moment with the auto update. Now the auto update, that means the interactive update. So as we saw, you know, if I move the model, we're getting those interactive updates. Now, these aren't always, you know, too useful when you're finished, when you've set up your render, because you may want to continue modeling, or you may want to move around your SketchUp model. So we have got the other options here to turn off the automatic rendering, and we can choose on demand or tiled mode. Now, on demand and tiled mode will only render when you hit the render setting button. So if I choose tiled mode, now tiled mode is very useful again when you're doing a larger render, because you'll see when I choose to render with the tiled mode, it renders smaller tiles, so it uses less system resources. Or if you're rendering a large render, you know, ultimately it's not trying to render the whole thing all at the same time. So we can see we've got the tiled render there, but I can still continue to work on this model if I need to. And as I said, that will only render when I hit the Shaderlight rendering button. So I'm going to go back to the interactive updates. So the automatic updates here. Now at the moment, our lighting options, we're set to the SketchUp Sunlight. And as we saw, we're fully compatible with the SketchUp Sunlight, and we saw the shadows updating there. But Shaderlight gives you the options to for some more advanced features, and also to give you better effects for the light. So at the moment we've got the SketchUp Sunlight, and we've got other options here such as artificial lights only. We're going to look at the artificial lights later, and also these other images, and we're going to look at these shortly. But if I just turn on the physical sky at the moment, You can see now that the image has changed somewhat and the shadows have picked up a different colour. The sunlight's also a different colour as well. Now if I choose to render this with the lighting environment showing as the background, we can see now that the sky is actually picking up some different colours. So if I rotate my model around, I can see that the sky has different colours around where the sun is, and we've got the different effects running from that. Now if I work in the SketchUp shadow settings, what we've actually done is we've created this physical sky program that it will create a sky to match the colour that you actually choose. So if I choose a different time of day, particularly going into later in the year when sort of 4 o'clock is certainly beginning to get dark, we've got these very long soft shadows, and we then also get the sunset sort of colour and effect on the sky there. So we've got quite a realistic effect on there. Or if I choose noon in July, we can now see that the sun is very high, it's very bright, the shadows are nice and crisp. And we get that effect, and the sky is sort of very blue. So it creates that realistic effect straight away. So what other options have we got in the Shaderlight render settings? Now for the lighting options, I mentioned about these 4 images here. Meeting room, London morning, business park daytime, and golf course evening. Now we get a lot of comments about why have these got these names, and the reason for this is these are actually special photographs called HDRIs, and that stands for high dynamic range images, and the names are simply where these images were actually taken. So if I choose London morning, this is a 360-degree image taken using a special camera that we have of London in the morning. So we can see the sun is now behind Tower Bridge. And what's special about the HDR image is that it contains this lighting information. So if I rotate the sun position, and now the sun is over to our right, we can actually see it's casting the shadows from this HDR. So we've got quite crisp shadows. They're still slightly soft because the sun was sort of did have a particular haze to it that morning. But if I choose golf course evening, now when I took this image, this was sort of in December, so it was that late winter sun, so very hazy sun, and we can see these realistic soft shadows coming from this lighting. And if I just brighten up the background, so we can see it a little bit clearer there, as I rotate my image around, we can see we're actually inside this 360-degree image of this golf course. Now, not only is this producing the lighting, it's also producing reflections as well. So reflections in the glass, and if we had any objects that were reflective, and this is useful particularly for cars and other items that you may have around your scene. But if you have a building with a lot of glass, this will help a lot as well. And as we mentioned, I can rotate this round, so I want the sun to fall onto the front of my building. So now we just get the soft shadows from the building there. And if we just wanted to sort of fine tune our exposure, this can be done in real time. This is a lot like a digital camera. So I can just sort of expose this image a little bit further. And if we wanted to, we could leave it there. But we've got our golf course background. And with the 360-degree image, it's always very hard to match your image with exactly the same depth of field and that you need for that image. So instead of my lighting environment as my background, I'm going to choose a custom background. And if I just browse to my particular folder that I've got here, now I've got a photo in here that I just took using a digital camera. So we can just see just the digital camera number there, and it's just a JPEG. So I'm going to choose that to be my background image. So what I need is just to sort of match the position, so I just can get that in the right position. But also I can see that the background image needs brightening up. So I can now match that exactly with the lighting. So we've got that image there, and we can get that exactly where we want it using the preview. And after a couple of minutes, this is going to just be finished rendering. And then it's a very simple matter of just, we can save as, and that image can be saved as bitmap, HDR image, JPEG, PNG and TIFF, and the usual sort of Windows formats. Now, I mentioned regarding Windows formats there, and I'm using the Windows version. We have been asked a lot, particularly regarding a Mac release, and this we are currently working on, and this is going to be available in early March this year. So, you know, that is going to be fairly imminent. Okay, so I'm quite happy with my exterior render there. So, you know, we can now look at that 100%. We can have a look around the image there while that's just refining. Now, again, you can see the water with the reflections on the top. So, quite happy with that particular image for my exterior render. Now, a useful tool that we have in Shaderlight is that I can take a snapshot. So if I take a snapshot of this image, there we go, we've got this snapshot, and it's at the time that it was taken. Now, it is worth mentioning that the snapshot can be taken even during the render as well. It's not live render at all. It's once you take that snapshot, it's just a capture of that image. But it's very useful to have a look so you can compare perhaps colors or a finish on something. But yeah, if you did take that while it was rendering, you're not going to be able to set that up to start rendering again. Okay, so I'm happy with that snapshot there. So let's now go inside, and we'll create sort of an inside render. Now we can see this render at the moment, and we have a lot of noise in this image. Now this is what I would actually expect to see. We got automatic exposure settings, and also its amount of light energy as well. So it's a lot like taking a dark photo with your digital camera. The photo looks grainy, it has a lot more noise. And the reason for this is that there's not enough light coming into this interior scene. Now, sunlight has an infinite amount of light energy, so it can enter a room, it can light the room, and obviously, you know, the sunlight's not reliant on computer power. So, you know, we have this amount of light coming from the HDR image on the outside. So what we can do is we need to set this image up so that we just need to sort of instruct some more light to come into this scene. Now, if I look in this Shaderlight light editor here, and we can see that it's very familiar looking to SketchUp. And we've got options to set up lights, and I could put a light in here like a point light, and I can put this on like our light in the ceiling. But we want to create a daytime effect on here. So we're going to look at all these other lights later, but I'm going to use a skylight portal. Now, a skylight portal is a lot like a one-way system for light energy. So it lets light through this light portal, but it doesn't let it back. So what I can do, if I just on my back window here, and I'm just going to draw a rectangle, and the orange line in the middle of the rectangle I can see is pointing into the room. So this is the direction that the light can actually enter the room. So now we've said that this light portal is set up so that the light is coming into the room and it can't make it out of that window. So what I need to do, there's obviously somewhere else where the light is getting through this this particular scene in quite a large way, and this is this patio door. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put a light portal over this patio door. So I'm just going to seal this because we don't want the light to be able to escape through this gap. So I've put this large light portal over this door opening. Now, if you are working with windows or openings or doorways, I'd recommend putting a light portal on every opening. And there are just certain techniques that that you could use. So with the light portal, but that's something we're going to look at in a later webinar. So if I now go back inside of the room, we've now got a lot more light energy coming in the room, and we can see on our render there that we're even at the stage there where we're a little bit overexposed. So I can just turn down the exposure there. Like I said, we can do that without re-rendering in the settings, and we can see that looks a lot better. Now it's not quite there. It looks still a little bit flat, and we've got some very dark shadows behind, like this vase here, and in the corners. Now, the reason for this is the light is coming in from our skylight portal, and it's following the direction of the light from our environment. So this is the sun, this is the shadow that's being cast by our HDR, and we're going to rotate that in a minute. But what's actually happening is the light is just coming into the room and it's hitting the wall, and that's where it's staying. Now the reason for this is that we're rendering this as an exterior mode, and we have an interior mode that turns on global illumination. Now global illumination means that the light will come in through the light portals, and it will actually bounce around the room, so it will pick up the colours from like the red walls and things like that. So it's a lot like shining a torch. If you shine a torch at a red wall, the light that comes off of it will give sort of that pink glow to it. But now we can see we've got the much softer shadows behind the vase there, and the more realistic light in the corner. So using global illumination, it creates a very realistic effect, sort of very quickly. And so we can see that our interior there, we've got the lighting how we want it. And as I said, this light is actually coming from the environment. So the golf course evening, it's the soft shadows. The London morning, this produces those hard shadows. And if I rotate, as we mentioned, so I'll just rotate this a small amount, and we'll see the shadow on the floor here and on the wall. This will actually rotate as well. So we've now moved this further around to the room. So we've created a completely different lighting feel, and we can get that in the right place to exactly how we want it. So very quickly, we've created this realistic interior by turning on the global illumination. Okay, so we can let that finish rendering if we want to, or we get the idea from that. And just to show, I'm going to take a snapshot of that, and this snapshot is of this sort of partially rendered, as I mentioned. So yeah, we can just leave that there. And I'm now going to look at a nighttime scene. So I'm just going to delete my light portal, because that's just going to be taking energy from my scene that I don't need it to. And I'm going to go back to my render settings, and we're rendering an exterior. So I'm just going to close my light editor as well. So what do we need to do to make this a nighttime setting? So then the lighting options here, we haven't got a night HDR image. Night HDRs, ultimately you've got the one source of light, which is the moon, and it certainly does cast light, but it's not the most powerful light. So it's very rare to find a nighttime HDR. But a useful tip that I've created a custom HDR, and all I've done is I've created a small square JPEG here, which is just 100 by 100. And it's basically just very slightly blue from black. So it's not pure black, because a nighttime sky is blue, and this is a way that a lot of people do go wrong on a nighttime rendering. They just assume that the sky is black. So so I've put this blue light in here. So it's blue HDR. So we're now inside this completely blue sphere. And for my background option, I'm going to choose this evening photograph that I've taken. So we can see we've got this on here. So at the moment it's overexposed, and we certainly haven't got the nighttime feel. Now the reason for this is that Shaderlight, as we mentioned, has auto exposure, and this works a lot like a digital camera. So this would be the equivalent of trying to take a nighttime shot and the shutter is open a lot longer on your digital camera to try and expose it to look like a daytime image. So I can turn this exposure down, and we can then see that we've got this much more sort of nighttime light. And I'm going to turn the background image darkness down so we can really control how that background image is. So you know, I just happy with sort of this sort of just sunset light from it. Just slightly darker there. There we go. So we can see the moon image there, and we've also got this planet in the sky as well. So we've got our nighttime render. What we need to do, now we may be happy with this just showing our model at nighttime, but want to have a look at how we can create this ultimately to make it look like somebody's living in there. So let's put some lights into the scene. Now inside of the model, we can see I've got a light fitting in the ceiling there, and I've also got one at the other end of the model as well. Now these are components, so if I just edit the component and I go into my Shaderlight light editor, and I'm going to use a point light for this one. Now a point light is an infinitely small point of light that shines light in all directions. So this is useful to sort of create a light bulb effect of light. And I'm just going to place this on the end of the sort of the light fitting there, and that's going to put this light into the scene. So after a second we can see that will update, and that's put the light in the scene. Now I'm just going to move that down slightly just so it's not as close to the geometry. So I want that casting light into the room. So we've now got that light in the room there. And if we come back outside, it's put the light on the other component as well. So this is a really useful feature, and it saves a lot of time by being able to attach a light to a component and for then that just to work. Now, as you can imagine, in a room, if you have downlighters in a room, usually there may be sort of 10, 20 downlighters. So, and you don't want to put a light into every particular piece of geometry. So if you create the component, that works very well. Now, I've also done this for this light on the outside. So I've got these downlighters on the wall, and there are 4 of these in the building as well. So this is a component, and I'm just going to edit this component as well. So in the light, I could create this as a spotlight. Now a spotlight is a directional light, but you can also control the angle of light as well. So you'd get the circle of light, and you can control how large that circle is. And we can see that we've just got the spread there. But I'm going to create an IES light. Now an IES web profile light is a very useful light file that is supplied by the manufacturers, and you can usually download these from the manufacturer's website. So if I just put this light in here, now this is 2 clicks because it's a directional light. The first click places the light in the scene, so that's just going to place where the IES light is, and then the second click chooses the direction of the IES light. So I've just got a line underneath my my light, and I want that light shining downwards. So I've now got this IES light shining downwards. So we can see we've put in a default IES profile here, and we've got this soft light shining on the wall. But I can choose a different file for this IES light. So if I go into my IES folder here, now I've downloaded these from Philips, and Philips have actually supplied these IES profiles. So if I choose one of these IES profiles, we can see the light now has a completely different fall off. We've got this large sort of light in the middle here, And if I choose a different one, and I'm going to choose this this eye color MRG2, and what they've got here, they've created the pattern inside this file that is thrown from this light. Now, if I just very quickly open this JPEG here, we can see I've rendered this using 5 different IES lights. So you know, that one creates quite a spot on the floor, and we get the patterns on the walls. So these are very useful to download from the manufacturer's websites for free, and they can be used in your model to create very realistic lighting. So if we zoom out of this, I'm just going to come out of the component, and we zoom out on our scene there. So that's you know, we can see now we've got these downlighters on the walls in the 4 places, and that creates sort of a nice realistic effect that we're after on that. So something that we can see in the scene that certainly want to look at now is this fish tank that we have at the back here. Now, I've just created this fish tank using a custom texture. So you can see Shaderlight is fully compatible with this custom texture. So if I just select this in my SketchUp material editor, so we can see there we go. I've just used a texture image, and then I've just used the position texture to get that in the right place. So I want to make some changes to the finish of that. So I'm going to look in the Shaderlight material editor. So we can see we've got the material editor open here, and very few settings in here, but it's a very powerful editor. So what we can do is I can set up the material type. So, you know, if this was a daytime scene and we just wanted this to be shiny, I can then set up the level of shininess, and we can now see that this is reflecting the room. So it's reflecting sort of the walls there on this building. But we have other options such as transparent and translucent if you want to use sort of different glass effects. But the one I want to use on here is self-illuminating. Now, self-illuminating material, this material will look like it's lit. It doesn't cast light, but it will actually look like it is glowing. And at the moment we're set to luminous paint. Now, luminous paint is a type of paint that's actually on your watch. So it's you know, it's not a very bright finish, but we've set up some presets here up to sort of extremely bright. But I'm going to choose the equivalent of a CRT monitor, and we can now see that our fish tank looks like it's actually glowing using this self-illuminating material. Now we have a bump option here, and I'm going to look at that just after this. So we've got our fish tank, looks like it's glowing. It's quite a nice effect from that. But I actually want it to cast some light, so I want it to look like it is lit. So using my light editor here, I'm going to choose an area light. Now, an area light is a rectangle of light, and it casts soft shadows. So I'm just going to move the light editor out of the way here. And I'm just going to draw this area light, making sure that the orange line is pointing into the room. And this is going to create this rectangular light over the front of the fish tank here. So after a second that's going to update, and we can now see this shining on the wall here. And I can make fine tuning to this, so I can make it a little less bright if I want to. And out of reference, candela, 125 candela, which is the default value of our lights, that's roughly the equivalent of a 100-watt tungsten light bulb. So I've just made that slightly darker, and I'm going to use my hue, saturation, brightness here, and I'm just going to give this sort of blue light to look like that's coming from the tropical fish tank, and we can see that updating there. So I'm happy with that particular area light there, and I'm just going to draw another one on the end here as well. So that's just then going to shine the light on this back wall. Okay, so I'm finished with my light editor there, so if I move that across, there we go, we can now see the light shining on the wall from these area lights. So if I come to the outside of my scene here, And we can see we're pretty much finished now. So we've got the light from the fish tank there. And that's looking pretty good for our nighttime scene. Now, one thing I'm not quite happy with is my wall. My wall at the moment is perfectly flat. Now, the options I have with this, if I choose the material, using the SketchUp material editor, and I can go into the Shaderlight material editor, so it will edit the currently selected material that's in the model. And at the moment we've just got this auto finish and there's no bump on there. So I can set this up, so if I give this an automatic bump, this will then give it a textured finish, so we can actually see the texture. It's a pretty heavy texture on there. So I'll choose a much lighter texture, a much lighter bump. So we've just got that texture on the wall there. Now what we can also do with the bump, now that's quite a nice texture for a painted finish, so I'm sort of quite happy with that one to finish there. But if I did want to create a custom material, now we saw in the fish tank we can do that. But if I use a texture image here and I'm just going to put a texture on there, and I've just downloaded this brick texture from the internet, and that's just put that on the wall, and really just want to make that that much bigger. So we've got that brick on there. Now we can start to see that certainly in our material editor here, it's still got that bump setting that we set earlier. So I can give it a much heavier bump setting. So this is working with auto bump. So it's looking at the contrast between sort of the black and the white on this particular image. And it's creating that bump effect on that wall. So it does create the bump on the automatic textures as well. But as we mentioned before, we've also created this as well. So if I wanted our this front wall to match the side wall that we put into the building earlier, I can paint this brick effect on here. And again, we can just make changes to that scale if we want that slightly bigger. Okay, so we can see we can make those changes to that. Okay, so just want to have a look at the Shaderlight system requirements here. Now we can see that Shaderlight doesn't need much more than actually SketchUp does. Shaderlight is a 64-bit program, but it's compatible with Windows 32 as well. But if you do have more than 4 GB of RAM and a 64-bit system, Shaderlight will use it. So it will certainly help out with the rendering. But yeah, so you're not limited to that 64-bit. It's also multi-threaded, so if you do have a multi-core CPU in your machine, Shaderlight will support this. So you can get some training videos available on the resources section of shaderlight.com or artvps.com. And email support is available from the support team at support@artvps.com. And we're always happy to answer questions there regarding anything with your Shaderlight rendering. So thanks very much for taking the time and watching this webinar. And we hope you enjoy Shaderlight for SketchUp. And if you want any more information, please do not hesitate to contact us.